Hi, it's Josh, your Goth Fragrance Bestie. I believe perfume is a language that speaks to us, not in words and colors, but in emotions and memories. In Goth Fragrance Dialogues, we will be listening to the people who channel and craft that language for us. In this episode of Goth Fragrance Dialogues, we'll be hearing from Victor at Zoologist. I had the pleasure of traveling to Toronto to sit down with Victor. He did mention he is quite camera shy, so instead you'll be seeing me for the duration of the interview.
First of all, thank you for sitting down with me. It's really an honor to sit down with you and to chat about Zoologist. It's been kind of the door opener for a lot of people to niche fragrance. So it's really just amazing to be able to sit down and chat a little bit about your experience in the realm of perfumery.
Thank you for having me.
Before we get started talking about the history of the brand, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Myself, I come from Hong Kong, and ever since I was a kid, I always loved playing video games. And I also have, I guess, an innate tendency to collect things. Right, so I'm also into art, so I liked drawings and painting and stuff. But it's only when I came to Canada that I studied technical illustrations, and I got into the gaming business, doing video game graphics. And my first job was actually casino games graphics. Yeah, so yeah, I've been doing computer graphics for quite a bit until around 40 years old. Yeah, so where I have my life crisis.
Interesting. What was your first memory tied to scent?
I always remember my father's hair wax. I don't think it's called hair wax. It's almost like a gel thing. It's like transparent, not waxy. But anyway, it has a very particular scent profile, and I always remember it quite vividly. And the next one probably is Fahrenheit, because my sister gave box sets for me on Christmas. And it's like, oh, well, I think it might be too masculine for me to wear.
Awesome. Moving from a background in arts into perfumery is a pretty big shift. How did that come to be?
Right, as I mentioned in the beginning, I kind of have a midlife crisis. You know, it's like technology, all the new graduates coming out of school and joining the company, they know all the things. Suddenly you doubt yourself, it's like, oh, I'm repeating myself doing all those Photoshop, but people are doing ZBrush or 3D Max and all those programs. I feel a little bit rusted, I guess. So I'm just worrying what happens next. And I'm not really a managerial person. I don't want to be managing a company and do any managing position. So I feel like, oh, with my skill, what I'm gonna do. And coincidentally, I fell into the rabbit hole of niche perfumery, and I kept been buying quite a few perfumes here and there, and I worry about my purchasing. Yeah, so I said, oh, I wonder if I could start my own brand one day. Yeah, that's how it started. I went to basenote.net or .com, and I posted the questions if there are any perfumers who would help me start my brand. And two indie perfumers, Paul Kyler and Chris Bartlett, came to the rescue. So it started with Beaver and Panda.
And how do you feel like your background in art influences your work in the perfume world?
I'm not too sure, but I think I approach perfume in a more, it has to have an art direction somehow. It's not purely commercial, that is just to please someone. It has to have somehow a visual story to it for a fragrance. I always find fragrance a little bit visual, to be honest. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Moving to talk a little bit more about Zoologist as a brand, can you share the story behind the inception of Zoologist and what kind of motivated you to focus on the animal side?
Right. As I mentioned before, I also like to collect. There is a period of time where I collect a lot of animal figurines. So, and that company, I think it's from UK, called Harmony Kingdom. So they have little animal figurines. All the figurines are actually boxes. They have the animal heads can be removed. It's a little box thing. Anyway, so I think the artist he chose very unusual animals. Like some animals I have, one of the animals is actually harvest mouse. So I always remember that what's a harvest mouse. So he chose very unusual animals. And I wonder one day, it's like, oh, maybe I could do a collectible fragrance brand with animals. So that's how it blended together.
Very cool. Your fragrances are known for that intricate kind of storytelling and collaboration with various, both indie and very well-known perfumers. How do you select your collaborations, and then what does that process look like once you've selected a perfumer to work with something?
It very much depends on the perfumer's personality, to be honest. Some perfumers have their own favorite animals to do, and sometimes I have my own preference. So if I've decided to work with a perfumer, usually I'll ask them if there are a particular animal you want to create. If they say no, I don't, then it's like then I'll come up with an animal. A lot of times I already know the perfumer's style. When I approach a perfumer, I already have some animals in mind.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned like you went to a perfumer with two animals, and you essentially were like, which one do you want to do?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
that was with Anthony. Yeah, when I approached Anthony, I asked him, "Do you want the unusual ugly animal, or do you want the beautiful animal?"
That's, and obviously
he's always up for a challenge. Yeah.
Right. And could you elaborate on the challenges and rewards of translating the essence of an animal into a fragrance?
Many times it start with a perfumery ingredient that I like. For example, squid. When I knew that there is an aroma chemical that's supposed to smell like ink, then I actually want to make that ingredient the standout note. Then I come up with the animal name, squid.
Okay.
So that's how it usually starts. But sometimes there are some, perfumers, they have a very strong affinity to a certain animal. Like for example, Cristiano Canali, one of his favorite notes is beeswax. So that's very obvious that he wanted to do a bee. The funny side story was that after finishing bee, actually the project started with two animals, like bee and the other one. He wanted to start, I think, 2 projects. And I gave him a few suggestions after we decided to do with bee. But the other one is like, I remember he said, I do not do cute animals. So eventually we did tiger, because we wanted to do a vetiver themed fragrance. I think vetiver is a very challenging note to design a fragrance of, because it's a very dominant note. A lot of fragrance that smells of vetiver becomes very common, I guess. So we try to make it a little bit unusual or more dangerous, so to speak. I'm not sure if I succeeded, but...
I mean, I personally really love Tiger. I love the way it evolves. It is like ruggedly handsome with a lot of interest and edge to it.
All right,
I
thank
think
you.
that delivers on,
Okay,
on
yeah.
the... So that's interesting. Sometimes if the perfumer has an affinity for an animal, that's the direction. Otherwise, you find notes that you want to work with and choose an animal around that.
Right. As times go by, they're like, we already have like 30-something fragrances. The notes, say there are not as many interesting notes to me. Then I have start to look for a different direction. Sometimes it's not notes, sometimes it's very abstract. As you have smelled one of the upcoming fragrances, I I want to do something romantic because I know that in the nature world there are animals that couples for life. So I just find that very interesting.
Yeah, I think that flows really well into the next question, which is, Zoologist has gained a reputation for unique and daring compositions. How do you perceive the evolution of niche perfumery as a whole, and where do you envision your brand within that landscape?
I think niche perfumery has become more commercial somehow. I remember a store owner once said to me, the teenagers nowadays want fragrances. When they were young, teenagers want sneakers. So now teenagers want, want to show off their fragrances. So definitely fragrances have become more trendy and popular. And the teenagers nowadays, they have like super spending power. So they would buy, they're not even working, but they would wear something $300 or $400 a bottle. So with that in mind, I feel like a lot of the fragrances, they want to charge that amount of money. And to do that, they also have to make the scents very commercial and mass appealing. So that kind of ruined the concept of niche perfumery, that they supposed to be very unique. Mm-hmm. So for me, the brand, it still needs to have a certain uniqueness to it. Not too commercial, but still wearable, I guess.
So you were just saying, the way perfume has become trendy, particularly amongst younger crowds. In an industry that's often following these trends, how do you maintain the authenticity and originality of your creations?
I don't think I chase originality that seriously. I think it's more like how I want my upcoming fragrance fits in the grander scheme of things, which is sometimes I tell people that the Zoologist line is consistently inconsistent. Sometimes you will find a very commercial sense, sometimes something like that's like paying homage to some older fragrances, very 80s commercial, kind of like green polo, like Northern Cardinal is one of the examples. It's like people, oh, that's not very original. But I just feel that as a collector, if I want to create my own line, I kind of want to have a genre, like all the different genres in the collection. Mm-hmm. So you will find vintage style fragrance, cheap. You'll find fougere. You'll find something commercial, warm vanilla, and then something outrageous, something, should I wear this to public, that kind of sense. So I want to have all kinds of things in it. So if it happens to be original, that's wonderful. And if it's not too original, I hope you also like that too.
Right. Yeah, I think there is a level of, we discussed this a little earlier, the authenticity of the breadth of fragrance in the collection makes it very approachable for anyone to come in and find something that resonates with them.
Yeah, I think that's also the fun of it. If you are new to fragrances, let's say if you really love, when you love cow, it's a very easy to wear fragrance. And then I actually got emails from saying, I love cow, and I started testing your fragrance. What is that? they found it very shocking. They were expecting everything to be similar to cow. I think what I love most is to collaborate with different perfumers. Like different perfumers have different personality, work style, and also speed. It's particularly fun if the perfumer, I guess the brainwave matches yours. It's as if like we have like a acknowledgement of what the scent should smell like. that goes really fast. It's really amazing. But sometimes some scent profile or the project concept is so challenging because designing a fragrance is not like designing. It's not like a interior design. For example, if you like a particular room, you can show photos of it for the interior designer. This is what I want. So that would be easy because they have many references. But if you say, oh, I want a fragrance to smell like this fragrance, then to a certain degree you're copying it. Right. It's not really that original. And if you want it to be unique or original, then we shouldn't use anything for a reference, should we? That's make it so challenging and sometimes time consuming. Because when you tell a perfumer a particular brief, to be honest, I actually do not know what it would smell like. This is how I envision the smell would become. For example, if I say the animal name, that would be revealing too much. But let's say if I want to, like for example, like I've talked about, it's like, what is romance? It's like I want an animal that's, to portray a certain romance through smell. This is a very abstract thing. Romance to someone could be a coffee by the seaside, or could be cuddling, all kinds of things. So yeah, it's a very abstract thing. So that when a perfume brief is very wide open, then it becomes very challenging to design a scent.
When you're, if you have the brief and you have the perfumer and you have the animal in mind, you can even give a high, low. How many iterations of a fragrance do you typically end up going through before you say this is where it should be?
Generally speaking, on average, it's about 6 to 8 revisions. Okay. But there have been a few cases where there are almost 40 revisions until the perfumers was about to cry. I was about to cry. Then it's become very frustrating and not fun.
Right.
The difficulty of deciding whether a fragrance is done or not is also very challenging, because I noticed that sometimes you might have a masterpiece, but then you say, no, this is not what I want, and then you change it, and then you kind of ruin it a little bit. You do not know when to stop. You just have to stop. There's no perfect fragrance. In retrospect, some fragrances, I have problems deciding when to stop. Once it stopped and I smelled it 2 years later, it becomes like a very natural thing, and people love it, and I love it. It's like, why was I struggling so much?
Got it. And then this wasn't one of the questions I had listed, but you have revisited and created different editions of several fragrances. And does that come from wanting to keep them interesting, wanting to always innovate? Like, what is the coming behind and doing like the Dodo Jackfruit or the Beaver Maple?
It has to do with, it has many different reasons. It's like when I started the brand, I guess I'm considered the creative director. I was not very experienced with designing perfumes, and also the perfumers that I work with, they are very indie perfumers. They do it for themselves. They when it's come to collaboration, sometimes it's difficult, and I do not know how to bargain and how to. When I say bargain, it's not about money, but it's more like about power struggle between, sometimes the perfumer thing is done and I think it's not done, and they said, no, this is done. So, and you do not know what to say, to be honest. So some perfumers, like after free revision, I think this is the end, we'll take it or leave it, that kind of situation. Then I say, oh, okay, I guess. And I feel like I have to release it. And so I released them, but then deep inside, I know that it's not exactly what I wanted. So as the brand grows bigger and I have more sense, then I feel like, oh, maybe I can revisit and redesign the scent. And other reasons somehow has to do with IFRA. Only one fragrance when I purchased the formula from the perfumer, and I asked the compounding house to do it. Then we realized that the formula was more than 80 ingredients, and he almost put the whole kitchen sink in the formula, and we couldn't find substitutes to make the scent smell like his original scent. So we just simply couldn't do it. And when it's done, we try our best. It smelled kind of similar, but then it's like many different reasons. It's like some of the materials are very hard to source, and so that's when I decided to redesign the fragrance.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of increased consumer demand for transparency and sustainability around ingredients in perfumery. How do you feel Zoologist Perfume addresses those concerns?
I don't. I think when a fragrance is, if the fragrance is reformulated or there are some changes, I will make it public.
Right.
That's how I would do it. Regarding sustainability, I just trust that the big company that makes perfume compounds for me will handle it. That's how I see it.
Got it. So looking forward a little bit, and reflecting on your journey with Zoologist, what have been some of the most memorable moments or milestones for you?
The interesting thing is that I didn't set the milestone, but in retrospect, I hit the milestones. For example, I won the Arts and Innovation Award for BAT. That was amazing. It happened. I was like, wow, that's unexpected. The other milestone was I've always wondered what is it like to work with a big fragrance company that the perfumers are classically trained, that do kind of commercial scents. And before Squid, all the fragrances were done by indie perfumers. And one day, the IFF VP of sales contacted me and saying, we actually want to design fragrances for you. What do you say? And I said, well, sure. So it just dropped on my lap. So yeah, that's a milestone that suddenly hit without me deliberately, asking for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very cool. And so BAT won the Art and Olfaction Award.
Yeah.
How did you feel with that?
It's surreal. It's because BAT actually, it was the perfumer Alan Coffey contacted me and said, I want to do a fragrance called BAT. And I said, sure, okay. And she sent me different mods, and we worked on it for summer. She said we only have about 3 months to do this fragrance because she's a professor and it was summer and she had the downtime to work on this project. And I said we better finish it in 3 months because school will begin soon. So we was like doing this, and it was like a very intense and fun 3 months period. And I actually showed the fragrance to a friend. At that time, I was still working full-time for a video game company. And she smelled it. It's like, wow, what is this? Could people wear it? But it's very cool. And she said, I don't think people would wear this, but, it's cool. And then, yeah, and it won. So
that was BAT and T-Rex were my introduction to Zoologist.
Oh, okay.
And T-Rex, it's so smoky and so loud. I was like, wow, I have to understand more about this brand. But BAT, I walked away with a bottle of. That was my first Zoologist purchase.
Okay,
so
yeah.
It's just so unique and so unlike anything else that's out there.
Yeah. I think when you are a very small brand, you don't care too much somehow. You just go with it. And I noticed that a lot of brands that I follow, they all started really almost intentionally to be outrageous. And as the brand grows, it mellows out. I think it's just like any human being. When you're young, you're rebellious, you are, despicable, and then you grow older, and then you do things more chill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The lesson here, everyone, is chill out.
Yes.
What is some advice you may offer to aspiring perfumers or people who want to start a brand and be a creative director to carve out kind of their niche within the fragrance industry?
I don't think really people need any advice nowadays. It's like I see a lot of brands popping up. I feel like they are really doing what they pursue. They want to do it, and I'm doing it. So it's great for them. And it's a good learning process. It's like sometimes, I think I remember an art teacher told me that there are different stages of realization how good your work is. The first stage is that you did not know you suck, and the second stage is that you know you suck, and the first stage is like you finally got it, but it's not amazing, and then you eventually the last stage is like you become like a super professional and stuff, and I think you have to release fragrances that might suck to the public and get some feedback, and then you grow your brand. You discontinue some fragrances, maybe you refine them. That's how you make a fragrance brand more recognizable, I think. Yeah, you just have to continuously improve the brand. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I mean, continuous improvement is important in every aspect. With such a diverse range of fragrances already in the collection, what future themes or concepts are you excited to explore that you want to share with everyone?
Okay. Well, if I share some of the concept, you will immediately know the animal, but I'll try my best to keep it suspenseful. One fragrance I work with Anton Lee. It's an aquatic fragrance, and it's an interesting concept because it's like Anthony is very famous for Secretion Magnifique, and it's a very outrageous fragrance. A lot of people hate it, but there are also some people who love that fragrance. And I want to work with him and see if we can respark that magic to have something outrageous without really copying the past. And for me, it's also a little bit interesting is that, it's like if you watch horror movies, sometimes the kids will doodle nightmares. And then when I look at those doodles made by the kids, the first thing I say is that it's done by an adult. It's actually someone who can draw, who try to paint like a kid, because a kid's drawing is, you cannot mimic it, because as you grow, as you become an adult, that you cannot draw something as rough as the children's work. So I have a feeling, I'm asking, since Anthony created Secretion Magnifique many years ago, I wonder if he could actually make something outrageous many years later. Mm-hmm. I wonder if he still have it. I want to see if it's possible. So I don't know if we have succeeded, but it was fun working with him.
I think you've succeeded.
Okay.
As someone who loves what I just smelled and secretions, I think you have.
Okay. So the concept of that fragrance is like, what happens? Can you use a smell to represent a little bit of pain? That's the concept of this fragrance. It's an abstract. I don't think there is a particular smell that can associate with pain. But let's say if you get attacked by the animal, can a smell represent that feeling to a certain degree? That's the project. So that was a very fun project to work with. The other project is that, some animals, they have been living with humans for so long, there seems to be two different kinds. If you say, let this animal, what is the smell of this animal? You might ask, okay, does the animal live in the city with the humans, or they live out in the woods? So that would be two completely different sides of the same animal. So I said, let's focus on one part of the animal that lives in the city, that mingles with human, that survive in the city, that part, and use that as a representation, like a fragrance to represent that part of the animal, not the animal that lives purely in the wilderness. That's the concept of that fragrance. So that's a very fun fragrance to design.
Yeah, very cool. Well, thank you so much for your time today. If you could let the folks viewing at home know where to find Zoologist online and on social media.
Yes, you can visit us on zoologistperfumes.com or go to Instagram. I don't remember. I think it's called Zoologist Perfumes.
I'll make sure it's all
you'll
linked
find that.
in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Victor.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Goth Fragrance Dialogues. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of fragrance and the incredible stories behind the scents that we explore. As always, if you want to learn more, be sure to check out the links in the description for more details and ways to connect with our guests. And don't forget to support their work. It's all about celebrating creativity and passion. If you're loving this content, regardless of what platform, please subscribe, that way you never miss out on a new episode. We've got more exciting stories, insights, and interviews coming your way. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Josh, your Goth Fragrance Bestie. Keep exploring the world of scent, stay inspired, and we'll catch you next episode.